Nothing to laugh about with Game of Thrones. Fourth season came to a bloody end in its finale last night as HBO caps its blockbuster show. Senior West Coast correspondent John Ehrlichman in L.A. with more on the program. And John, the last episode is all about keeping viewers hooked. And don't spoil it for any of us who haven't watched it.
No, never. But, you know, we tried to guess last week what would happen, and we hinted there would be some blood, and there was definitely some blood. That's all I'll say. But I think people who watch this show know that it definitely does get bloody. Look, there are lots of twists and turns with this program. It's what gets people excited. It's what makes it one of the most watched programs on television. And it's also what makes it one of the most important shows in the history of HBO. Let's face it, Betty, right now, this is an important time for HBO. We talk about the rise of Netflix, people cutting their cable, and this is a business that is still so closely tied to the world of pay TV. And so obviously they get paid a lot of money from the cable providers to make their programming essentially exclusively available through pay TV. And so the cable companies are hoping on big shows the same way that HBO fans are hoping on big shows. And at least with this one, they've got the numbers to back it up.
Okay, what kind of investment has HBO made in the series?
You know, it's funny. We talk a lot these days about how Netflix has spent a lot of money on its original programming. Well, in the case of this show, we really shouldn't be talking about it as a show. We're really talking about a movie that's cut up into different pieces, because there are millions and millions of dollars that are spent on each episode. If you add that up over the course of a season, you're easily talking somewhere between $50 and $60 million that can go into the production budget. And just like with the movie business, that doesn't even include all the promotional and marketing material that goes along with the show. And I think there is obviously a willingness to spend big when shows are bringing in the numbers, because this becomes a big factor at the corporate level. I mean, Time Warner is a company that generated something like $30 billion in revenue last year, and yet Jeff Bewkes, the CEO, routinely talks on the conference call about this show because it has been a driver, for example, in their video sales unit.
Right, it creates a lot of buzz as well for Time Warner. So, you know, so give us a sense, John, of the viewers and how big Game of Thrones is versus Netflix.
Well, you know, first of all, Netflix doesn't share viewers with us, so I think HBO has always been a little salty on the fact that they have generally been willing to share these numbers. They felt pressure long ago to share them, and in the case of Game of Thrones, we're often talking about getting into the double digits of millions, so a lot of people end up comparing it these days to The Walking Dead. Look, I think that they are very pleased to share numbers where Netflix doesn't share numbers, because it's their way of saying a lot of people are watching this. We also know piracy is a big deal with this program, as we were discussing last week, and yet on some levels HBO is okay with that because they feel like getting the word out, as you pointed out, is a way to get more people to sign up for the subscriptions, and that's the more money that they can share with the pay TV providers.
So how come in HBO's deal with Amazon to stream content from them, it doesn't include Game of Thrones?
You know, it definitely seems like because this show is still on the upswing, and there are still at least 2 more seasons that HBO is committed to, that they feel like there's a lot of money still on the table. You're right. Amazon cut a big deal recently with HBO for basically a lot of library content, including The Sopranos, which is the show that a lot of people compare to Game of Thrones just in terms of the overall viewership. HBO has always been willing to sell their old programming. In these days, obviously, fewer people are buying DVDs, more people want digital content, so they cut that deal, and probably because of the rise of Game of Thrones, they had the leverage to keep it out of the deal.